Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Music Rewind, a podcast where we look to tell the stories behind our favorite albums. I'm your host, Steve Epley, and in each episode I will invite a guest on to tell us about their favorite music album, how they discovered it, and what makes it special to them.
We now join our regularly scheduled program, already in progress.
Well, let's go on to one of Danny's questions.
What should we hit us up with, guys?
I have a feeling for your second question, we're probably going to have the same answer.
Yeah, we kind of already talked about it. Well, I want to let me do the third one.
All right.
What was the way? So obviously now you can be exposed to new music everywhere. It's TV ads. It's literally everywhere. But how did you find out primarily growing up? How did you find out about bands and albums? And do you think the way that you found out about them impacted what you considered good or bad music? And I'll go first. So a lot of it was sort of finding it from everywhere, but we had, 120 minutes, Yo MTV Raps. You had the radio, sometimes you would be lucky enough to hear or find something, somebody would give it to you, but it was pretty much all the same places. And I think it had a huge impact of good or bad, because I think for me, anything that was played on 120 minutes, I'd be like, oh, this is good. And then you'd listen to it a little bit more and you're like, oh, this is really bad. They had one good single, or it all sounds the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. This is a terrible question, Steve.
So
I thought for sure we were going to have the same answer. Just you and I walking around disc jockey and Musicland, looking at the album covers and going, oh, this looks interesting. Let's go with that.
Well, and I will say there's, remember Michael
Zach Lane telling us what to play.
No, remember the Kaczynski brothers had that band Rosemary, the cover band. That's the first time that I heard Hey Jealousy by the Gin Blossoms. That's the first time I heard Nearly Lost You by the Screaming Trees, is because they had those two songs in their set when we went down to the carnival.
And our parents let us go see a rock band at you were like 12, right?
At the beer garden.
That was at the beer garden.
Yeah.
And it was an all ages show. And I think we were just about not even all age to be an all age show.
No.
Because I want to say that I was like 13 or 12.
It had to be around there, because Nearly Lost You would have been 92, right? 93?
Yeah. And the Gin Blossoms, for sure,
It's 95. Yeah, I guess. So maybe it wasn't the first time. I don't know. Can I take this question back, Steve? Can you edit this one out?
No, I've got my answer yet. So
you don't want to.
Yeah,
Let's
Gin
just move
Blossoms
on.
was 92. So, yeah, we would have been 12 or 13.
So for me, though, I didn't get MTV until I moved to LAD in 1990. And it was like eye-opening. So many different things. And I don't know if you remember, but in the early 90s, MTV had rock blocks or music blocks that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd get like 4 or 5 R&B or rap ones. You'd get 4 or 5 pop ones, and then the rock ones. And that's where I started to learn that there was more bands out there than just what my parents were playing. And then, so that was like the first half of the 90s for me. And then after that, the aforementioned Hank's Garage. Hank's Garage was a cornucopia of different music styles of what people would bring in and play. You'd have, Mike, putting Pearl Jam on. You'd have Chris Hank bringing in Radiohead. You had Gary Nass bringing in Anthrax or something. I mean, you had all kinds of different stuff. Kyle was big into Ozzy. But then in the middle of all that, we had Oasis playing nonstop. I mean, we had all kinds of different music in there. And, well, overall of it was Smashing Pumpkins. That was probably the biggest of it all. But with that particular garage, I mean, every weekend, just music. We were just put on different CDs and, being the, 15-year-old music critics that we were, saying what's good or bad.
I would say, like, for me, it was like the magazines. We'd go to like the News and Booze or the Prue Mall, like to like the bookstore. Yeah, B. Dalton's, and then like just grab all the alternative Nation and like Spin, and the late 90s was like Blender. But like that's like I would read the articles, and like even now, like reading like music blogs and stuff, when it comes up and it's like, hey, check these records out, and then that's how I would find a lot of stuff. Or it would be honestly, a lot of times it was just luck. Somebody would be like, hey man, did you see these guys? And be like, no, let's check them out. Or Tommy Jepson would show up and be like, oh, Vogue's got this new band we got to check out from Springfield, man. They're really cool. And then next thing you know, you're listening to all this different stuff. And a lot of it had to do with peers and who you hung out with. I feel like, I didn't have an older brother. So Tommy, Jepson was kind of like my older brother when it came to music and stuff like that. Him and, which is funny, Marissa's older brother, Jason, they would bring in some music that we never really heard of. And the only way you could get that is having older people tell you what was cool, and not even what was cool, but hey, check this out. I remember Tommy brought in Buffalo Tom. I would have never heard a band called Buffalo Tom without Tommy talking about them. Or when you got to college too, especially at the end of the 90s, it was people in your dorms and stuff that you would talk to and just get different perspectives from people of what they really liked. I would bring some stuff. People would be like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, oh, sorry, it's just sad bastard music.
To that, same thing with my last 2 years of the 90s was in the barracks.
Yeah.
So that was a completely change of pace as far as from the Illinois Valley because for some reason, everybody has to have their barracks door open and play their music as loud as possible because everybody else does need to hear it. So that's what you're walking down, and you'll hear DMX over here. You'll hear some random country shit over here. And the one guy that plays Turn the Page from Metallica on repeat all day in the barracks. Oh, God, that could have been another song of I Don't Need to Hear Again. The barracks was a great place to kind of discover new music that a lot of us had missed the past year and a half because we were literally out of the loop with basic and our training that we just couldn't. Yeah. There was no radio or nothing. So you get your permanent duty station. What is this girl in a schoolgirl outfit dancing? Is this music now? That's interesting. Can we mute it and just watch it? But it looks like Dom's back. But that's where I first heard DMX and stuff and all those other stuff that was just not played in the Illinois Valley. That was
interesting. Two things that you both brought up is not only word of mouth, and I think that was kind of cool about growing up for at least three of us on this, growing up in a small town where you kind of float between, you had folks listening to this and they would turn you on to a band, and then you would go, Michael, you mentioned Tommy Jepson, and he was big into the Britpop stuff. Buffalo Tom's one of my favorites, and then Steve, you'd mentioned Hank's Garage, and Gary Nash is oh, you've got to listen to the new Megadeth record. You're like, okay, I thought they were an 80s band. You're like, no, Countdown to Extinction is a fantastic record. And then, folks turning you on to Jane's Addiction and things. But also something that you had mentioned, Michael, about music magazines, I think was huge too, is because not only if a band was reviewed, but then if you found your artist that you liked, and I know that's been said to death, but if Cobain would mention somebody, I was instantly trying to figure out, I got to get this record. And that lasted for a long time for me too. And it's still to this day, when you read something about a musician that you like or is inspired and they mention an album, you go back. I think the first time I ever heard of My Morning Jacket, Dave Grohl had one of their t-shirts on in one of their videos. And I know that's 2000s, but it was something that immediately stuck with me. If it's cool enough for him to wear the t-shirt, I've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Dom, are you back with us?
I am, gents. I am. So sorry about that.
Oh, no problem, man. Current question is, how did you find out or hear about new bands or music in the 90s?
Oh, man, word of mouth. Word of mouth, 100%. Word of mouth, MTV, really the music channels, whether it be MTV. I feel like VH1 was out. But we really didn't have to listen to it that often, but it certainly was something that wasn't happening.
Yeah, I think too, going back a few times MTV has been mentioned, but especially when they had their show, you get to that middle 90s or even early 90s, you've got not only just, you had mentioned Rock Block, Steve, before, but you've got MTV Raps, you've got 120 Minutes, you've got Headbangers Ball.
At one point, it was like Hairbanger's Ball, though.
But was like those were the first, like Nirvana was on Headbangers Ball.
Yeah.
Famously, Kurt wore a prom dress because it was a ball. He was wearing a ball gown to the ball. But then not only that, with just mainstream videos all day, that they would play, and it was so you'd be like, oh, that's a cool video. I need to check that out. And then other people were talking about it because you're all watching the same thing. So that was a huge thing. I think we were sort of the tail end of that because, obviously we know what MTV is now and what it turned out to be. But I think, word of mouth and MTV was huge.
Yeah, we were just up in Lake Geneva, and the hotel had MTV Classic, and which I don't have. And we had it on Sunday, night, and it was like how MTV was on Sunday. It was like all these, rock blocks and like you were saying, Steve, and like some like rap blocks. And then sure enough, Dan, at like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, it was 120 minutes started. Nice. And it was like an old episode of 120 minutes. And I think that's one of the things I know, like the kids today, they got like TikTok and YouTube and all that stuff, but just to have that one source, it really did make you want to go find out about different music and different bands and like albums and stuff.
I think it's a missed opportunity for MTV these days because people will argue, oh, well, you can get that on YouTube. You can get that on Vimeo or TikTok or whatever. But it's from an educational standpoint, where you've got those shows that are playing music and talking to the artists of the genres that you are learning and starting to enjoy. Yeah, whether it's Headbangers Ball or Yo MTV Raps or Alternative Nation, you're getting you're getting all that information. Like, oh, well, Dave Grohl was on there. He mentioned the Screaming Trees. Okay, I want to learn about them now. You're not going to get that on TikTok.
No, and it's the only way you get stuff about new music is like, honestly, it's like blurbs or podcasts or, if you have to go seek like the music blogs anymore. It's not like, in the mid 2000s and later, and probably in the mid 2010s, the music blogs were so big, like Pitchfork and the robot one, I can never think of it. But like now, if you want to go find, like you have to remember to go online and look at that and then hope that because there's just so much information now. It's almost like an overload that people are getting. That's why it was hard, like having like Apple Music. It's like when I was a kid, like you'd have to save up or you have to try to like scam BMG or Columbia House for out of CDs.
Never.
But, never. Spam look at my CD. But, like now it's like I can press. It's almost like it's too much. Like a lot of times I'll just sit there and be like, I don't know what to play because there's so much.
I think what we lose too is, and we're sounding like old guys, but it is a 90s podcast. What's lost though is there's no zeitgeist anymore. So, and before it would be, oh, this video is going to be in rotation, or this is, they're going to be interviewed in this magazine and it's going to be there for a while. And you have time to spend with that album or that single or that band. And everyone's sort of seeing it together. Where now, even on a music blog, if you read it, okay, this record's coming out, it's talked to death or, talked about before it's released. By the time it's released, it's already old. And they're sort of like, oh, well, we're moving on now. You're like, wait, what? And I know that's a generational thing, but I think
even MTV had like the spotlight things like buzzworthy videos. That's where I first started.
Buzzbin, yeah.
The Flagpole Sitta or Hey Man, Nice Shot from Filter. I mean, songs like that, okay, that was a great song and it was highlighted. I want to hear more.
Yeah.
And then you got to those two records and you're like,
Oh, hey man, Carlotto Valdez on the Harvey Danger album. I'll fight for that song.
That's a good song. I'm just.
Well, I had one other thing too. Do you guys remember The Box?
The Box? No.
Yeah, it was like a music channel. So the only reason I remember is I remember my buddy. They had one of those the black box cable boxes or whatever, the ones that got all the channels and stuff. And it was like a premium service, and it was like where you could go in and make the video request songs. And it was called The Box, and you would it was like pop, rock, country, whatever. And you can just call in and you would basically be able to the users would call in and vote, and that's how they would pick like the next song that would play.
That sounds amazing.
Really? Yeah. The only box I knew is I think my dad got in trouble for it like in the 80s because he had one of those black boxes, and the cable guy comes in and he goes, "Oh, sir, did you know that you're getting all this stuff for free?" He goes, I knew those kids were messing around with something. He blamed it on his children who were like 6 and 7 years old. that we somehow figured out how to install like a black box to the TV.
So crafty little first graders.
Yeah.
Using wrenches to tie in the coaxial.
All right, well, let's move on to another question. Dom, do you want to ask one of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been kind of out there for a little while. So I guess the next question I'll ask you guys is, what's your favorite song to listen to outside of the genres that you kind of normally listen to? And so for me, I guess I'll answer the question first. For me, one of my all-time favorites is "In the End" by Linkin Park. By far, one of my most. I just love that song, and it's you have the diversity of you obviously got Chester on the vocals, you got Mike Shinoda with the lyrics and the R&B, the rap and the vocals. Of course, you got the breakdown with the chord and just the metal and everything kind of just coming in all at once. And for me, it's just a song that I just resonated with. Honestly, it's a song I listened to growing up before any type of sporting event, whether it be basketball, football, track, or whatever. I would listen to that song. It was one of the ones that was kind of just get me a little pumped up and get me ready to go, kick ass.
Yeah, that song and that whole album, fantastic. In the end, one of the best tracks on that whole album, no doubt there.
I will say this, if you want to get technical, it was written in 1999, but the album came out in 2000. So
I thought it came out in 99.
I thought it came out in 99 too.
The single probably came out in 99, but the album came out in 2000.
You know what, Mike? You might be right there. So I have to.
Hey, the only reason I know is because I've just been flipping through my my Excel document, and
this calls for a spreadsheet.
Oh my god!
I'm so sorry. This is why I'm in finance.
I'll allow it.
Super dorky.
I'll allow it because it is a fantastic album.
No, and you know what? I had to double check it because I was like, man, I thought that was 99, but I'm pretty sure. I bet those singles came out like.
Well, and you know how you kind of place things in your life. You soundtrack your own life there with you listen, and that was a Barracks album for me. That was played heavily in the Barracks, and in 2000 I moved out of the Barracks, so as I remember hearing that going in and out of different rooms over the weekends. So
yeah,
so
that's why I would place that in 99.
So officially it was recorded in 99, and it was the single was released October 9th of 2001.
Oh shoot!
Wow,
because that album was in 2000.
That's insane
for sure. Well, I think it works for me.
I let it stand.
As long as you didn't say oh man, it was definitely Rollin' by Limp Bizkit. Then I would have been.
I mean, that's 20-something years ago anyway, so it's hard to remember anything these days.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely Faith.
So I'll put the question to Mike. Mike, what do you think? What would you say is your one 90 song cross genre that just kind of sticks with you to this day?
Oh, I mean, mine would have to be "It Was a Good Day" by Ice Cube.
Ooh.
I mean,
I love that, and what makes it even greater now is that fact that somebody did the work to figure out what day it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they figured out the Lakers beat the Supersonics on this day. The Goodyear blimp would have been in LA around this time, and they did it. It's February something, 1991 or something. It's so ridiculous. It's really funny, But I love the one thing that like on MTV and all that stuff and on the radio, you never heard the end of it when the song's done. And on like the actual version, he says, what the hell am I talking about this for? Like, this is stupid. I gotta go. I'm Ice Cube, man. I gotta like go kick someone's ass.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. That's actually my dad's favorite song. And you know, picture me at the time a 7-year-old kid hearing your dad, you know, just bust all these rhymes and recite word for word Ice Cube lyrics.
That's awesome.
I mean, it was it definitely made some good memories for sure. And even to this day, like when the song comes on the radio, I start rapping it. My wife, she starts rapping it. I'm pretty sure the kids just start looking at us like we're crazy, but there'll be a point in time where I hope they'll appreciate how great a song that was.
Oh yeah, it's a great. I have a friend of mine that when he goes to the casinos, when he's playing craps, he always right before he throws the dice, he says, "Backdoor Little Joe." Like every time he throws the dice, every time. And so I'm just like, I can't, you know, this is like this 5'6" like white guy just yelling, "Backdoor Little Joe."
Well, nowadays you'll have people look at this Ice Cube, the actor, that guy.
Yeah. I know.
The actor in those family movies, that guy.
Are we there yet?
Yeah.
Oh, you should listen to his first couple records. They're not so family friendly.
I mean, Ice-T's a cop now, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
For many years now, yeah.
I mean, come on.
I think he's been a cop longer than a cop killer because he's been on SVU for like 15 years now?
Probably longer than that, yeah.
Yeah, that's an understatement. You're right. I mean, he's wrote it out longer. Heck, he lasted longer than the main stars.
That's right. I'm
going to take my answer for this one, and I'm trying to take myself out of the podcast because, you know, with my podcast, I've discovered a lot of songs that I'm listening to a lot lately that are outside my genre. But going back for the decades, it's Tupac, Hail Mary.
Okay,
nice.
That's just a fun song to crank up and listen to, and it's always in my playlist.
I feel like I know this is gonna be a split decision for the Biggie versus Tupac conversation later. Maybe a lot of Tupac love going on.
It's because he's the more talented actor.
Whoa! Let's talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, I think you and Danny might be arguing that point.
Those could be fighting words in some circles.
Oh my god! So I looked at this a little bit differently. It was a great question. Not necessarily genre. I guess rock is or alternative is my genre, but something that I listen to a lot. Like 90's hip hop is something I listen to a lot, but a song that I keep going back to that's not one of the more popular ones is Mobb Deep, Shook Ones Part 2. I don't know if anybody knows Mobb Deep. Fantastic record out called The Infamous back in the 90s. So a buddy of mine, his brother, John Stats, would do skateboarding competitions and stuff and head out east. And he'd always come back with mixed cassettes of like stuff that people were listening to out there. And it was all like East Coast rap. But the first time I heard like Outkast, Luna's, Wu-Tang Clan, and this song by Mobb Deep was on one of his mixes. And it's just a fantastic song. I recommend checking it out. But it's got a great lyric that says, "Ain't no such thing as halfway crooks." Come on, that's poetry right there. So
absolutely,
that's a song I keep going back to a lot. It's been on numerous playlists, and it's always near and dear to my heart.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned that, right? And if you guys seen 8 Mile, that was on 8 Mile. That was one of these songs that I was going to say on 8 Mile. That was one of the songs that was featured there.
All right, I'm gonna go to a fun one here. What is your favorite one-hit wonder? Go for it, Danny.
My favorite.
I'll take it.
Oh, whoa!
I got right on top of my list here. Hey. There's no better one-hit wonder than Superdrag, Who Sucked Out the Feeling.
Oh, that's a good one.
That is a great song.
The rest of that record is just trash.
It's terrible.
Oh, it's so bad.
Where'd you go now that everybody knows?
It's so catchy.
Yes, it really is. And Steve, it's 100% in the list, man, from that year.
Such a good song. They were a Bonnaroo too. They sucked. They were bad.
I can't imagine.
It was like 40 minutes of nothing, and then they ended with "Who Sucked Out the Feeling," and everybody went nuts.
Yeah.
I got to go with Four Non Blondes. What's up?
Oh yeah,
definitely.
I mean, Linda Perry has gone on. She's won Grammys for wrote songs for Britney and Christina, and you name it. But that song, in terms of a one-hit wonder, is just...
It was so weird. It was just such an odd song, yeah.
I think the whole thing is a sing-along, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's real, hey, 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 what's going on over and over again. But just when you think about a catchy tune that sticks in your head that sounds as good today as it did back then, it's sort of the definition for me of a one-hit wonder.
She had such a unique voice that it fit the song, but I couldn't tell you another song that they sing at all. I mean, completely one hit.
I can tell you other songs that she wrote.
I know she's a great songwriter.
She's probably had more of those than anything, right?
Yeah.
So, has Hanson Oompop been taken? No, I can't. Just because we were talking about it today. Yeah. We talked about Sellout, Real Big Fish was always of that, and then honestly, it has to be the Harvey Danger. Like Flagpole Sitta for me. Ooh. Just because I
took him off my list because I like the record, but I'm a nerd. So
I tried to like that record a lot more. The other one I was like, but I don't think as much people know it, is Bandito's The Refreshments.
They are a fantastic band.
Because that song, but you never saw anything else from them.
Preacher's Daughter. Come on. You don't question me about 90s one-hit wonders, man.
But by the way, my alternate was the Proclaimers. I'm going to be 500 miles.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Could we I wonder if it could have just been what is a crappy pop song that you really like that didn't really bother you that much?
Well, we got to hear from Dom yet. Dom, what's your favorite one-hit wonder? Oh, did we lose you, Dom? Well, before Dom comes in, I'll say my other alternates were Stay from Lisa Loeb and 9 Stories.
Oh. You know what?
Another great soundtrack, the Reality Bites soundtrack.
Right. Reality Bites was really good, yes.
And yes, Stay. This is what I mean, pop songs that you still kind of enjoy.
But there's so many, though.
I just got a text from Dom. He lost connection, but his one-hit wonder is Color Me Bad. I want to sex you up. Oh, that's great.
Girl, you make me feel... Dude, but there's so many. They're like Dishwalla, Counting Blue Cars. Tell me all your thoughts on God.
we are missing the one we talked about earlier, though, but over text. Groove is in the Heart.
Ooh, Delight. Bootsy Collins.
With Q-Tip.
Yes. There's so many of those songs, too, that sort of...
There's a ton in the 90s.
Oh.
So many.
And you're like, yes, this song's a banger.
How Bizarre. Tub Thumpin'.
No.
Tub Thumpin'. Torn by Natalie Imbruglia.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one.
Come on. What's the... There's so many of those. Joan Osborne, What If God Was One of Us?
I dropped out. Did we talk about the Get Knocked Down and Get Up Again?
He just mentioned Tub Thump, and that was it.
My Bluetooth went out of my earbuds, so I missed a couple minutes. So
Walking in Memphis,
yes.
Life is a Highway, Tom Cochran. I know Rascal Flatts had a hit with it, but come on. I'll mention it. I mentioned in a text message earlier, but so when I worked at the Uptown as a prep cook, there was a head cook that every time he was on shift, he had 2 songs that he put in. He had 2 cassette singles. He'd play them one after another. One was How Bizarre. The other one was Tub Thumpin'. And he loved those 2 songs, played them over and over and over again.
How about Unbelievable by EMF?
Oh, and then Jesus Jones. You can't mention EMF without Jesus Jones.
Jesus Jones had 2
right here,
hits.
right now. How about the New Radicals?
Yep. That was just on the 90s playlist. Where Everything About You by Ugly Kid Joe.
They had 2 hits.
What was the
Cats in the Cradle was their other one.
Yeah, that was a cover though.
It was a cover. Yeah.
There's a good song on the end of that record called Mr. Record Man from Ugly Kid Joe that I recommend. Believe it or not, it's the only one I used to listen to all the time. It's an acoustic little song that's pretty good.
Pretend You're Dead by L7.
Yeah, they're not a one-hit wonder. Come on.
Do you remember the song Slam from Onyx?
Oh, I used to rap it at lunch all the time. Lee would beg me to rap it. Da, da, da. Let the boys be boys.
I was going to say Technotronic, but they had multiple hits.
CNC Music Factory.
There you go. Yeah.
Is that 90s? No,
yes,
that might be
80s. No, CNC was like 91. It was on the playlist.
Is Marky
today.
Mark considered a one-hit wonder?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean,
How about,
his brother has more hits than him.
What? Remember Snap? I've got the power.
Who the hell was that?
Oh, Delight today that we were talking about, Grooves in the Heart.
Yeah.
That's where you dropped out. We talked about Delight.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. That narrows it in.
Sorry. Yeah, a bunch of that stuff was coming up
Biz
today.
Marquee.
Oh.
Yeah, that played too. That was a great one.
That's a great song.
He just passed too.
Yeah, that was a big loss. All right, Danny, take us to another question.
All right. You're a promoter. You've got a 90s nostalgia concert. You've got 3 bands.
Oh, okay.
Dead or
Yeah. You narrowed it down to 3 now. That's a change.
My list just keeps going.
Yeah, I've got a list now.
It's
like a 12-day Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 bands. 5 bands.
Rock Never Stops tour over here.
Who's on your list? 5 bands. You're the promoter. 5 bands, 5 acts.
Oh, 5.
Who's on your list? Michael, we'll start with you.
Wait. Are we talking like the bands in their 90s prime here?
Yeah, you're seeing the 90s version of that band.
So we're talking 90s Axl, not today's like Fat Axl.
You can say, I want to see GNR, Use Your Illusion, Guns N' Roses.
All right.
If you want to get specific. But yes, you're seeing him in their 90s heyday.
All right. I mean, obviously Nirvana and Pearl Jam. Then I would say like Biggie, Tribe Called Quest. And then this just cheats because then I get a 6-band in Soundgarden because then I could get Temple of the Dog songs to be played.
That's a good cheat.
That's a cheat.
That's a good cheat
code. Cheat code. Hey, with Tribe we also get Busta Rhymes too, right? So that means like that's like 6. I get like 7 bands on mine.
So now Danny's going to work in some Sunny Day Foo Fighters magic here now. There.
No, I was just going to say ditto, except I was going to add Wu-Tang Clan to my list of Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Biggie, and Wu-Tang would be a hell of a top 4. Because then you get, if Wu-Tang. You want to talk about all the solo records and all the stuff that Wu-Tang has, I mean, we could just go on for there. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Sunny Day. I mean, I know they're coming back, but in the 90s, I mean, I got to give a shout out to that, right? Yeah, I guess you can't really pick 5 bands, can you? Or 10.
The list, I had to stop myself. I'm like, I'll just do like 10.
See, what I was thinking is bands that would put on, like, it's going to be a good show, right? So, I mean, Nirvana is all time. Like, if we were of this generation and you're into rock music, it'd be like growing up in the 70s and missing out on Zeppelin, right? You wanted to see them live when they were all together. But, yeah, Biggie's got to be on there.
I know. Dan, we definitely know how this conversation's going between Biggie and Tupac for sure.
Dom, I don't know if you're on or not. If you want to give your if you're a promoter and you have 5 in your set list.
You got to go Biggie. You got to go Tupac. You got to go Nirvana. I would say for me, Jodeci from an R&B perspective was amazing. And then Nirvana for sure.
That's a good set list. Dom, they couldn't hear you for some reason. But so to recap yours, you had Tupac, you had Biggie, Jodeci, Nirvana. Who was the 5th one?
Oh, Wu-Tang. Man.
Wu-Tang. Okay.
I knew I liked Dom.
Yeah, because Steve, you can see he's talking, but I can't hear him.
Yeah, I heard him loud and clear. I don't know why.
Okay, well, that's good.
Sure you did. He's going to hear this episode and go, what the fuck are those bands? I didn't pick any of those, Steve.
Color Me Bad.
You said Mariah Carey for 7 hours? What the?
Color Me Bad. The ugliest boy group of all time, boy band group. Color Me Bad. Really one guy was good looking in that thing.
All right, so I got Guns N' Roses, Tupac, Beastie Boys, Pearl Jam, and Oasis.
Oasis, yeah. Oasis, like if I could see them like in like Isle of Wight Festival or like Manchester, like in the mid to early 90s, would have been.
That's why I asked 90s prime era.
Yeah, that would been. They'd be good to see.
So 90s prime. We're counting GNR in 90s prime? Splitting hairs here, Steve.
Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, I think, are fantastic albums.
No, I know. I guess. Because I would rather
like
see them
7 to 8 of the songs that are fluff.
I would rather see them like 88, 89, like after Appetite comes out in 87. But I gotcha.
Yeah, but I really love a lot of the songs off those albums. I mean, November Rain, obviously, and then, Civil War and others. And I don't know where Lies comes in. Lies before. Right before.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lies is like 88.
Yeah, something along those lines, yeah.
You Could Be Mine. I mean, that's
late 80s for sure.
Rocking.
The video alone with the Terminator, with the X-Gov.
And Edward Furlong.
Yeah.
All right.
Great videos. We could just have like a 3-hour podcast just talking about videos. We could be like,
greatest videos.
We could be like Beavis and Butthead and just like commentate on the videos when they come up.
Well, one of my favorite videos, just to touch on that, is because we talked about Tribe earlier, but Tribe Called Quest, Scenario.
Oh,
it's such a fun video to watch nowadays because it's all like Winamp graphics on it, like old 90s Windows music player. It's hilarious. Busta Rhymes is in there. Oh, that's great. It's such a great video.
It's a great song, great album.
Very underrated band.
Mike, go ahead, Dan. Don.
I was saying Tribe Called Quest is a very underrated band for sure.
They're definitely one I'd like to listen to more. I need someone to bring one of their albums to the table, like their best one that I can have a reason to dive into it. All right, Dom, give us another question.
Sure. So the question is, and that's I guess my final one was, what were you all's thoughts? So I guess growing up in the 90s, obviously, on the East Coast versus West Coast rap beef, like what did it mean to you? Like what was your idea and perception on it?
That was weird because growing up in the Midwest, like no one cared. I mean, really, because there wasn't like a lot of rappers from Chicago at the time, or like Midwest rappers like that were as big as the two guys. And I think at least even like the guys that were really into rap, like at the high school, like I think I always liked both sides anyways, for the most part. Like it wasn't a big thing. I personally like I like Dre and Snoop, but then I like, Biggie more than I like Tupac. You know what I mean? Like,
I think you're right.
It's like back and forth of like the fact that those guys were like, had issues with each other and wanted to do all that. It was like, whoa, like.
I think the main perception in the Midwest was that, at least in the rural Midwest where we grew up, was that it was basically not really an act, but just kind of part of their personas, right?
Right. It
was just, they're beefing. It's not anything serious. This isn't something that's going to come to gunfire. Like, what the hell? Thought it was just basic. Beatles versus Rolling Stones level of rivalry. Just sure. Why not? And what influenced me more on it was that, Tupac more had the backing of Dr. Dre and Snoop and that crew versus Biggie had Mace and Puff Daddy. And that's a very narrow-minded approach to it, but that's the only, that's the visibility I had on it at the time. I didn't know any others. And because of all that, Tupac and the West Coast just seemed to have better music to me. And that's how I approach it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is not realizing the seriousness of it. Because I think you kind of grew up in the 90s. There was, you know, Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain yelling at each other or getting in a fight at the MTV Music Awards, or, you know, somebody saying something disparaging about another artist. And you're like, oh, that's what, you know, at least to me, that's what this East Coast, West Coast thing is, not realizing the literally deadly seriousness of it. And it was never, oh, you can't listen to West Coast if you like East Coast, like you guys were saying. It was just sort of, I liked it all. You know, The Chronic is one of the greatest albums of the 90s, if not ever, period. So is Ready to Die by Biggie. So I think it's just not knowing, I guess, or not having the awareness, because it wasn't sort of, or maybe it was just the way that it was sort of the information was given to us. It was coming through maybe Yo MTV Raps or the music magazines, just as some of those other so-called feuds were being fed to us. So it didn't have that heightened seriousness, or at least at the time I didn't realize it until obviously, you know, things went down.
What was your take on it, Dom?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear your perspectives, especially, you know, Mike, you kind of shared, you know, your perspective from it, the Midwest perspective, and, you know, not really having a dog in the fight, per se. So, it's kind of interesting to hear you share your thoughts on it. I think it was, I mean, and Danny kind of alluded to it as well. Very unfortunate, and it was very at the time we didn't think it was as serious as it was, and then obviously when you know 2 lives were lost, it really kind of really just opened everyone's eyes as to really how serious it was, and it was unfortunate. I mean, it was just terrible, and when you think about it, especially now, you listen to the crap that's on the radio now. We really lost 2 savants in the game. To really something that was just foolish, and guys who were normally, you know, who were friends at one point. So it was just really sad. So, I mean, it was, and, you know, for part of the beef, I lived in the East Coast. The other part of the beef, I lived in the West Coast. So it was kind of different. Interesting to see like how both sides kind of view the dispute as well. So there was a lot of, you know, complexity in people's thoughts on what they thought, how they felt about, you know, one artist versus the other. And it really just shows like how Americans typically will side with whoever is near and dear to them or closest to them, as opposed to, you know, who might be right or who might be wrong in a situation.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, it's definitely interesting to hear all the different perspectives from each coast.
So I totally agree. Me and Danny are just looking at each other like, yep, that sounds like a great thing.
I know that's since it was his question, I wanted to hear his answer. I guess I'll have to wait till release day.
Yeah, we'll have to wait for the pod to come out.
Dom, they can't hear you, but Dom gave a very eloquent description of having lived on the East Coast and West Coast.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah, you gotta wait till it comes out.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
I can hear you just fine. So yeah. All right. Let's see. So since Dom is stable where he's at now, he missed out on
just questions 2 through 10.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
To anybody that makes it this far in the actual podcast episode, you know, I thank you very much, but we're going to backtrack a little bit. Dom, what band or album didn't click with you in the 90s that you grew to appreciate later in life?
Oh, gosh. You know, I would say Nirvana. Their first album. I can't even tell you the title of the album because, I mean, again, wasn't a huge fan of it growing up.
Bleach?
But, I believe.
Mike, is that Bleach, their first album?
Yeah, but he's probably talking about Nevermind.
Nirvana, Nevermind. He probably doesn't even know that Bleach is a record.
Let's see here. You might be right. It was no, it was Nevermind.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nevermind. Yeah, Nevermind.
To be fair, I tried to listen to Bleach and I didn't really like it too much.
You know, Steve, I'm going to go off on a 7-hour tangent. So if you guys
well, Bleach came out in the now the memories come back to me. Bleach came out actually 89, I think.
Yeah, so that's 89. It wasn't 90.
87. 87.
87, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But never mind for sure. Never mind for sure. And so, and partly because, it wasn't what I knew. I was 7 years old when it came out, right? And 7 years old, completely different background growing up, right? Again, my mom and dad didn't listen to rock growing up. They listened to blues, R&B, and and my dad, hip hop, stuff like that. So, Confunction and Cameo and the Gap Band was my dad's era of music, right? So nice. I wasn't exposed to it, and you hear that the guitar comes in on Smells Like Teen Spirit, and you're like, oh, wait a second. Even though this is not what I'm normally used to listening to, this shit kind of sounds good. This is kind of jamming here a little bit, and you start bobbing your head, and then all of a sudden everything just comes in, the percussion, you hear the cymbals crashing. You're like, damn, I'm finding myself, almost like I'm having a headbanger's ball over here, and this isn't what I'm used to. And then you start going through the album, and listen to the lyrics and the vocals and the context of what Cobain was talking about, and you're like, well, this is some really deep shit, and this is really compelling and really, really good music. And I didn't appreciate that until I think I really started listening to Nirvana probably I guess had to be in the 2000s, or probably like right around the high school era, like 2000, 2001 for me. And so it was, I would say that album, I would say by far that would be one of them. And I know it's kind of like a lazy way of doing it because, it's a popular album, popular band, but for me being, from a different culture, that one just kind of stuck a little bit.
I think you missed out on the underappreciated album or song. Did you catch that one?
Yeah, I think I was trying to answer it, and that's when I started having all the issues. Okay, so underappreciated album. I'm gonna go with, for my most underappreciated album, I'm gonna stay true to my roots, but I'm gonna go R&B. And this was actually an album from a soundtrack for a movie, and it's a completely. One would say it's for a macho guy like me, it's kind of soft to say this, but I'm going to go with it. There's a movie in the mid '90s, Waiting to Exhale, started Whitney Houston, a bunch of other actresses, I think Lila Rashawn and a couple other actresses or whatever. But anyways, that album, amazing album. I mean, you're talking about some of the best R&B singers of the era, of the generation. Whitney Houston, Toni Braxton, Brandy, Monica, and they all put out some really, really high quality songs. I believe maybe 2 or 3 of them chart topped at number 1, and it was really good R&B music, really good music. And the movie was kind of cheesy, but that album there, it was some really good R&B ballads there, and especially from the album, actually Mary J. Blige. Oh my God, I almost missed that song. Not Gonna Cry by Mary J. Blige. One of the greatest. I put that on that Lenny Williams Because I Love You, like that stratosphere of begging, and not necessarily begging, but like with just being a woman scorned, or just kind of just sharing just raw emotion. And that song she conveyed in there. She conveyed like those thoughts on that. So much so, I mean, she was even like when the scene happens in the movie and you hear that song, and now when I hear the song today, I immediately get that vision of the movie when that scene happened where the husband leaves the wife and everything, and it just takes me right back to that moment. So that album though was classic. I mean, I want to say that I know Brandy and Monica had a song together on that album too, which was really good too. So, but yeah, that album there was
That Boy's Mine.
I think The Boy Was Mine was on that album.
That's only I heard that today. When I was doing some research.
Yeah, actually, you know what? That one wasn't on there, but they did both of them had songs on that album though that were really, really, really solid. I'm gonna have to pull the track listing up to kind of run through.
I remember the movie, being out there and the soundtrack being, pretty heavily popular at the time. But I haven't seen the movie.
I mean, it wasn't like Bodyguard.
Well, I was just going to mention though, but you guys were talking, not joking before, but we were talking about Mariah Carey before, and when you had just mentioned Whitney Houston being on that record, you talk about somebody, I know maybe your mind goes to her 80s stuff, but you talk about the Bodyguard soundtrack, Waiting to Exhale. When you talk about all time 90, like peak of her powers, some people go to the 80s, but man, that 90s when she was just crushing it, especially with the Bodyguard soundtrack and I Will Always Love You. I mean, and Mary J.
He gets those notes.
Right around when she did the national anthem at the Super Bowl. That was like the
I was in that wave. I mean, that's what took Whitney Houston from like, you know, obviously she was always, you know, super famous and super popular, but like once that happened, like it, you know, obviously she was singing because I think Dolly Parton, that was her song originally, right?
Yeah,
I Will Always Love You.
Yeah. And so, you know, when that happened, I mean, it brought in a lot of country fans. They were like, "Wow, this girl can really sing." And hell, you know, in some cases, people were like she sung the song better than, you know, Dolly did. And so it kind of
that's her song.
You know what's crazy is that Dolly's been on, if I'm remembering correctly, she's on record saying that her version, Whitney's version, was just somewhere she didn't even think the song could go.
Absolutely.
Took it to heights she didn't even think it could go. And just like her relationship with that song has changed so much because of Whitney's version of it. But talk about a song that was everywhere. And just, I had the cassette single. I think my sister had the CD single. And I mean, it was just one of those songs that were just.
Yeah, my sister had the soundtrack because she would blast those. I Have Nothing was another great track off there. Yeah.
She did. You know, that does like, you know, you're talking about like Whitney, and that does remind me of, oh shit. Never mind. Come back to me. I totally forgot what I was going to say.
You say Dom talked about Never Mind.
To transition off that one, what's your most overplayed album or song?
Ooh. Most overplayed song from the 90s?
And to catch you up, Danny said Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Oh, well, yeah.
Well, I'll just
there's
say
a lot of context that's missing there.
Yeah,
but I just wanted to put them on
it's one of my
blast.
favorite songs. Nirvana is one of my favorite bands of all time, if not my favorite band of all time. So it was one of those. I equated it to a song like Stairway to Heaven from Led Zeppelin, or one of those songs that I don't necessarily need to hear again because it's a part of my DNA.
Yeah,
so just to catch you up on that, Tom.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's fair.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, you could go with, you know what? I'm going to go with a Biggie song, and I think he's, you know, easily, you know, one of the greatest rappers of all time. But if I didn't hear, you know, the song with I'm hearing the song in my head right now, but I can't think of the name, the actual title track of the song. More Money, More Problems.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah,
amazing song. But if I didn't hear it again, I would be okay. I wouldn't be, you know, too distraught. That
just makes me think of, say, Puff Daddy and Mace, you know, flashing like Rolexes in the camera and the video and stuff with the jumpsuits and
It would have been nice to see like a, you know, especially when you talk about, 90s and early 2000s hip hop, right? You had Hype Williams, who's one of the best music directors from a hip hop perspective, at least. I think he was the one who did that Busta Rhymes and Janet Jackson video that cost like, you know, several $1 million or whatever. But if you would have had him doing some production and videos for the Bad Boy, it really would kind of change your perception on them. But unfortunately, you didn't. And you had Puffy controlling everything, and it was god awfully cheesy. I was a post on Instagram. It had, what were the worst outfits from 90s music videos, and the red Nike leather suit and that he and Mace wore in that outfit. It was like a red like Nike jacket and a red, atrocious. Oh my God. With the Missy Elliott trash bag from her.
Yeah, what was going on with that? Did she have like a little, like, you know, those blow up dinosaur costumes now that people wear?
She had the fan in the back.
Did she have the fan in the back? Is that what was going on? Like, she
was a pioneer. She was a pioneer.
It did give us, though, some of the best Weird Al videos ever.
This is true.
Yeah, the 90s did help Weird Al's career like more than anything else did.
When he parodied that, and he had, instead of Puff Daddy and Mace, had him and Drew Carey.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was great. That stuff was hilarious.
Yeah.
Steve, I remember now what I was going to say when we were talking about Whitney, about like that's their song now. I always think of Trent Reznor when he talks about Hurt and 9 Inch Nails, and he's like, once Johnny Cash did that, it's like his song now. Like it's not mine anymore. Like, but you can re-edit that to make that like kind of tie back in a little bit better.
No, I get what you're saying. 9 Inch Nails is something that we haven't even touched on.
There's so many things. Like, I've got 3 pages. I haven't mentioned anything I wanted to. I'm babbling like an idiot over here.
One of the best band logos ever. Simple, but effective. Yeah. Loved it.
Nice.
You see it on a shirt, kid, you're like, what the hell is that? And you're like,
yeah.
I could have gone with Lost Highway for the compilation.
Oh, Lost Highway is good too.
Yeah, I forgot all about that.
That's pretty good.
Dan, you mentioned the Crow album earlier as a soundtrack that really resonated with you.
Yeah,
I mean, that one. It was so even like the movie was so dark and everything, and I felt like I don't know who like if there was a central composer for the for the soundtrack or whatever, but my God, they were on it. I mean, they were spot on. The album matched the movie. It was dark. It was mysterious. It was, obviously it just fit the era. And honestly, I think without that movie, you might not have seen rock kind of or alternative music kind of take the stage in which it did, in mainstream.
Interesting.
I think that movie really made it like, hey, like it kind of shined the spotlight on, because I mean it was there. But then you're like, oh, it's on the big screen. And, you had Brandon Lee, and then there was a controversy. Obviously, he passed away when they were filming and everything. And all. It was just so much going on with it. And then the great music. And the movie was actually, for a 90s movie, was, pretty good at the time. Obviously, now you watch it, it's a little cheesy. But, it worked. It really worked.
I think what you just mentioned, though, about the music matching the movie so well is a great point. And I think too, because it's a comic, it's based off a comic. I think they did a great job with the sort of bringing the atmosphere of the comic into it. But then that soundtrack, you're right, because it pulls together, and just the variety of artists on it. You've got 9 Inch Nails, and then you've got The Cure, who at that time are sort of, in that early 90s, they're sort of over their peak a little bit. Stone Temple Pilots are on it. I think Ministry has a song. It's sort of that industrial, but it's like you said, bleak and atmospheric as well. And the way they use those songs in the movie too, it's just.
Didn't Pearl Jam have a song on that album too?
No.
No. Pantera.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking Pantera, which I shouldn't.
Rollins Band, Violent Femmes, Rage was on there too. Against the Machine, which, those guys.
When you name, then you think about the bands you named, Stone Temple Pilots and Rage. I mean, these are all bands that, if they're not already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I mean, they're certainly going to get their name called here really soon.
Well, and that was pretty much the lineup of the first few Lollapaloozas too, is that album, and some of those other bands, that we've been talking about. So you think about sort of, we've sort of a theme that's been running through the episode of sort of all these different genres coming together. And you think about, I'm going to see, we said it before, but I'm going to see Body Count and 9 Inch Nails because or I'm going to see Ice Cube or Wu-Tang and then Pearl Jam, because in your mind, like, it's all coming together at the same time. And there wasn't that huge divide that I think, there has been in some other eras, I guess. But another way to bring that to life was sort of the soundtracks and the curators who, pass that on to us. I think is pretty defining, like you said, Don.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to thank you for listening to this part of our 90s Music Roundtable. The full 3-hour episode is already up on our Patreon. Otherwise, the next part will be out in a few weeks. What music topics should we cover in future bonus episodes? Let us know on our socials. Thanks again for listening, and as I always say, listen to the full album. Until next time.
A podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. Back to you, anchors.